What's going on, Cancer? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to the Chariot Friends. Justin here. How you feeling? This is that time. The moon's in Scorpio. She tends to feel a lot in Scorpio, but you can get a lot of really strong, I think, intuitive downloads as well when the moon's in Scorpio. But it is just watching out for those pitfalls when she is in this state of the zodiac. But we'll talk about that all here more in a moment. But if you are new here, again, my name is Justin, and know that when you're coming across this video, you're in sync with the moon, and she loves that. But there's also a place for you if you happen to have Cancer in your placement, Sun, Moon, Rising, maybe Mars, wherever. This one's for you. And I do tarot cards. Oh, that's something to talk about. And I do tarot cards spreads based on this lovely luminary, the good old moon. And I'll talk about what sign she's in, what phase she's in, when she's going. Boy, of course, just all them lunar shenanigans. And just so you're all aware, this is a general reading, not a one-to-one. So take what fits into your story, discard the rest, and everything will be dope, Cancer. Now, let's jump into it. Because yeah, this is some very interesting energy. Oh, and it's happening on a well. let's just get into this thing. I'm gonna shuffle your general energy while I'm talking about this. But depending on when you're watching this, happy Mars Day. Mars is associated with Tuesdays, and this is a action-packed day. Tuesdays are I like to talk about are my like kind of designated workout days, or at least like one of them. And I try to catch it if I can't. I try to catch like on the other days that I work out. Try to catch it in the Mars hour. And there's something about that when you are consciously like making that pact where it's just like, all right, Mars, I'm channeling this Martian energy and this fuel. There's something that's there. It gives just like whatever task that you're doing that requires a lot of energy. Maybe you're moving. Maybe you decide to go for a walk. It just gives that extra oomph. There's something there. Definitely something there. And I invite you to explore that, definitely for sure. But I find even Mars Day can be a great day for, even Mars hours for just like exploring your passions. You know, maybe you like to draw. Maybe you like to paint. Maybe you like to fish, whatever that might be looking like. Yeah, getting in those sort of practices and things. But yeah, and another thing that I like to think about with the oh, and I find too, Mars is a great time for summoning up courage. So if you need to, maybe you want to go ask for a promotion, maybe you're gonna go ask somebody out. This could be Mars Day. Could be a great day for Mars days are great for some. I will say for some adult activities. I'll just leave that there. But if one other thing that I like to focus on with Mars is to think about your Mars placement. How is your relationship with Mars, especially when Mars is the lesser malefic? So knowing how Mars operates in a day chart versus a night chart, because in a day chart he stirs up all kinds of trouble. But in a night chart you can work more constructively with Mars. It's not that you can't in a day chart. I have Mars in a day chart, but there are times where I've had to get eyes on him for sure. So that's just some things, and even noticing how Mars transits are for you, where like what, and not even just with like the planets that like aspects that he's forming, but even like what house he's transiting through. He's going through my 12th house right now. That's all Leo risings, and he's got me feeling some type of way sometimes. But it's there's some things that are needing my attention, but it's a good thing to pay attention to. So, but enough. Well, not really enough about him. We're gonna definitely talk about him some more, because depending on when you're watching this, on the 21st of January, the moon is going to be entering into the waters of Scorpio, and this is going to be happening at about 8:20 a.m. and that's going to be Pacific time, and she's getting ready to be in that last quarter phase, which is going to happen in a few hours from this time. But I wanted to talk about this first, the moon in Scorpio, because this is where she experiences her fall. And planets in fall, like similar in detriment, it's not that they're not functioning. It's just like with the falls, they have a tendency to fall into that. You think of like literally falling into that kind of lower vibration of the moon. And when we're thinking about Scorpio, they are ruled by Mars traditionally. They're the fixed water sign. So unlike Cancer, the sign that she's dignified in, that's about initiating the feelings, that are just kind of going with the flow of things, Scorpio is a little more concentrated when it comes to the feelings that come up. And so sometimes when you get fixated on a certain emotion, especially when that maybe tends to drag you down, or that we haven't quite learned how to nurture that yet. Maybe this is fear, maybe this is anxiety, maybe this is anger, depression, whatever that may translate as. The moon can get caught up in that, and then end up kind of nurturing that a little bit more, and like that thing becomes a whole massive mess. And so that's where you want to, if you find yourself getting stuck in particular emotions, figuring out what is the cause of that. How can you move through that thing? I like to think of sometimes a Scorpio as, when you think of fixed water, of like visualizing a power washer. When that water is focused, it can clean off. I mean, it could cut through rock. I mean, like when you really focus on that thing. But just like I'm thinking about when I remember working at this painting place, and we would take a power washer to like a deck, and like how it would just remove all of the dirt, but there's a control with it that still kept the wood and things intact. But you had to be careful with it, because if you stayed too long, it would damage the wood. And so there is this kind of delicate dance of learning how to work with the emotions that I think that happens with Scorpio. But when you do work with those things and you have that relationship there, that's what makes Scorpio such a powerful sign. And that explains that kind of Martian rule behind that as well. Scorpio's not, they're familiar with the ranges of emotions, and eventually that higher expression learns how to transmute and transform and alchemize those feelings into something of the opposite of that depression, elevation, that anger, that joy, so finding the balance between those. So this is a very delicate time, I think, for the moon to be. And so just kind of treat yourself with compassion, and others. I find with compassion as well that moon in Scorpio is particularly perceptive to the undercurrents of things. So the things that aren't spoken, and the feelings, the tone, the inflections, the body language. And Scorpio's sharp. And so I would pay attention to that, and as far as like projecting any sort of emotions, things like that. But I think that this is an easier time for the moon to be in this. And this is actually kind of beneficial for Mars too, because the two of them will be in mutual reception. Which I got a chart here, and I'll talk about that actually. We can go ahead and talk about that right now. Let's go ahead and switch over. And I'll talk about the last quarter here in a moment. But as you see here, let me get my drawer out. You got Mars here, who's in Cancer, retrograde, doing his thing, whipping up a mess. And you got the moon here. But when you have mutual reception is when the planets are in the signs that the other is strong in. And so there's this understanding that happens with the moon and Mars, where the moon can kind of help Mars guide, or can help guide Mars through those maybe repressed emotions, so he's not so responsive all the time. And I think that in reverse, that Mars can help the moon not be afraid of dealing with certain emotions, to have the courage to face them head on, and to allow to get energized by that, to be able to like, I can do this thing, I will get over this thing. And so I think that there's something really nice about those two. Even though they're technically in signs of their fall, there is this relationship. And even a deeper thing, a little sidebar here. The moon and Mars are both part of the night sect. So they already have that relationship there as well, like I was saying, in like a night chart. So the moon and Mars would be very important. So the fact that they have this communication together, I feel, is also just equally beneficial here. So just some little extra things to think about. But let's talk about the last quarter phase, because that happened. It's going to be happening at 2 degrees and 3 minutes. The moon is in Scorpio and the sun is in Aquarius. And the last quarter phase, I like to think of this as the thing that you're kind of cutting out. Okay, you had this whatever theme that may have come up for you for the month, and the problem that may have been impeding you for your growth. This would be maybe that letting go process with the last quarter, the action that's taken during it, because it's another action part of the moon. Because when you speaking of more Mars energy, the squares are when the planets are, like I said, 90 degrees apart, and I like to think of them having that Martian nature. So there's a need to take some sort of action. There's some energy there, and if it's not dealt with, it can build about this frustration, this tension. There may be some delays in things, but I find that this is interesting that this last quarter is happening between two of the fixed signs as well, because this could be looking at a certain philosophy or a certain thing that you've just been clinging on to for a long time, because those fixed signs, when they lock onto something, they can have a hard time letting that go. And that's with any of the fixed signs, Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, or Leo. And this, I think, this last quarter can be one of really resolving something that maybe both the head and the heart, that head is Aquarius, that heart Scorpio, have been wrestling with. And so look at where your chart and look and see where this is happening for you, how this may be translating for you. So for example, with this, let's say with this chart, let's see, this would be like a Gemini rising. This could be happening in your 6th house and in your 9th house. So this could be where I'm just thinking like when you're maybe going through some sickness and things like that, that mental fortitude of like trying to get better, like having how do you talk yourself through the healing process in a sense? How do you keep yourself from getting in this lull of like, oh, I'll never get better, I do this. Like, I know sometimes when you get sick, it throws off your whole routine. I think about when I can't work out. And like most of the time, like I may not be able to work out how I used to, but at least if I can get some sort of motion, that would be an example of how I would maybe invite someone to work. And again, it just depends on what may be coming up for you. That's just a loose example. But another thing that I wanted to kind of talk about here that I found really fascinating is that Mercury is going to be approaching in opposition with Mars here soon. And I could see that as needing to take some sort of action, whether this is keeping a hope, for example, like you're going through a tough time. Maybe that 6th house, there's some sort of combativeness that's going on and you're not sure how you're going to get through this. And you're like kind of calling on that higher power, like, okay, help me through this, find me some guidance, like whatever that might look like. Again, I'm just kind of just throwing together some kind of tale here. But I think that Mercury opposing that Mars is seeing like how something like how we maybe been operating or how other people been operating around us have been doing, or maybe you've been doing maybe there's a certain vice that you've been struggling with, and just understanding like how this can't keep going like this. Like maybe something needs to change. Maybe there's something going on in the relationships that's possibly happening. Maybe there's something in finances, but just a little something I think to think about with this chart. But the other thing that I found really kind of fascinating, and then we'll move on here to the tarot. Let me kind of adjust this a little bit. But I wanted to talk about the Sabian symbol that was of where the moon's falling to, because it's really fascinating. It's phase I think that's the correct number, 212 of Scorpio. And it's a house-raising party in a small village enlists the neighbors' cooperation. And the keynote for this is the feeling of community demonstrated in a basic joint effort. And I really like that. I think that there's something very, because now we're talking about this kind of cooperation that's going on between us and the community. And I think about that, what are some ways that you can, almost with this last quarter, how maybe we can even take some initiatives to kind of let go of that stranger, that otherness when it comes to people, and to form that kind of cooperation. And I think about the sort of like kind of tacit agreements that maybe you have in a neighborhood, as far as like keeping your lawn straightened up, and I know there's some of course like different like legal things that go along with that too, but when we're all living in this neighborhood, we're not trying to cause a mess. We're in this place where we're not trying to disturb one another and like maybe playing music obnoxious at like really crazy hours, or just something there about just like this sense of bonding with the community and the joint effort to just keep the peace. I think when we talk about a basic joint effort, but there's something too about knowing that you can count on your neighbors. Like, I'm thinking about growing up. We lived in this very little neighborhood. It's like, I wouldn't even call it a neighborhood. It's like there were 4 houses that were kind of all together. It's like my folks, one as you enter the road, my folks, and this other one on either side of them, one at the end of the road. And I loved that growing up, that I felt comfortable around. I would ride my bike around quite a bit, and I would ride it around towards like up over their little hill at the end of the road. I'm not leaving tire tracks or anything along those lines. I'm not messing anything up. And, people would come over and like maybe play with the dogs, and the neighborhood dogs are all just kind of doing their thing. And even thinking about how like the neighbors one of them had like a plow for his truck, so he would plow out all of the driveways, and we'd go over to get him food. My stepdad would hang out with him quite a bit. So, and I even think about how neighborhoods, even like just something about this really just kind of made me thinking about this. And that's why I like the saving symbols. I think that they're a really great thing for feeling this stuff kind of out and how your relationship is with whatever this maybe brings up for you. But actually the neighbors that were across from us, both of them actually just passed away over the last couple of years, and their nephews, and I think it was the nephew or something that has taken over the house or something along those lines. But even getting to know them, like, okay, how, and then what can we do for you as you're getting through these transition? This is a lot going on for you. We need to watch the dog while you're dealing with this stuff, like, do you want us to come over and trim your lawn, or like whatever, those type of things. There's something about, I think, that Aquarius energy, knowing that you can count on people, that Scorpio energy, there's that trust that's happening. So there's something, I think, in there to explore as well. So something to just kind of think about with this energy. But if you want to work more personally with these cycles and understand, like, maybe you have your moon in Scorpio, maybe you're coming up on a lunar return, or whatever this is, maybe this happens to be falling on a specific point in your chart, and so maybe there's something to look at there. Down in the description box below, I have a link for all the services that I provide. So if that's something that resonates with you, feel free to set up an appointment, avail yourself, or if you have any kind of questions. I mean, probably YouTube. I mean, we'll figure something out. Definitely will figure something out with that. But I think that's all I got for you there. So let's go ahead and switch over. And then, last little bit here, these readings that I do, they're not gender-specific readings, so apply these energies to people as they make sense for your situations. And I'm going to ring this bell to bring some cool vibes to kind of maybe calm the emotions a little bit. So if this is something, maybe that might be something too. If you find a lot of emotions during this time, maybe some sound baths might be good. But let's ring this bell and let's get into this thing. All right. Let's see what's going on here. Interesting. Okay. Oh, I like this. Okay, so you have Archangel Zadkiel here. Zadkiel here. That sounds better. And this is a card of self-acceptance, compassion, and forgiveness. And there's a lot that's coming through here. I'm getting drawn to the number 21. That's the World card, or the Universe card in the depending on the deck you use, Rider Waite or the Thoth deck, and that deals with this thing of closure, is what I think. You get to the end of the line. It's the last card of the major arcana. Something is finishing up here, and that forgiveness is really sticking out, as far as maybe if there's forgiving a situation, maybe not necessarily forgetting what happened, but forgiving a situation so that you're not carrying it anymore. I find it interesting where I understand if someone did something did something that wasn't in their highest vibration, how we can, how do I want to put this? How we can put a lot on them, and hold a lot of like hostile energy. But I think that ends up doing more harm to you than it does to them. And I think that, and I know it's easier said than done, but there are times like when I think about maybe people who have like slighted me, or where I felt like a situation could have gone better. Yeah, I may feel some type of way about it, but I definitely just make it a point to, I want them to get better. I send like high vibrations, love, and all those things, because the alternative is they continue to do those low vibrational things and nothing, and it's just spreading it around and nothing is happening. And I don't want that for anybody. Like, you wish them awareness, and you can do it in a bit of a condescending way. You can still get some jabs in there. But I do think that there's a compassion that needs to come sometimes when we have things that happen, because there are situations where just sometimes people get caught up. And it's not to excuse what's been done, but especially if there is this acceptance of like, yeah, I did this thing, and I'm not proud of this thing, but I'm going to make better from it, and I'm going to make this active initiative. I think there's something to be said in that. And I think that like allowing yourself to let that go, maybe if you're holding on to like a conversation and anger, maybe writing that out, the things that you wanted to say to that person, whatever that's looking like, and then set it, then, find establish a safe space, fire things and set that on fire so that you can release that. Maybe there's something about burying something even. That even is kind of coming in here. Maybe this could even be like, and just, take this as it resonates. But I'm even getting taking an old version, like maybe an old picture of you at a spade or someone else, and like burying it in the sense of like we're putting that past there and utilizing that as like maybe like something new to come out of that. We're allowing that old visage or that old person, that old picture of them to compost and to become nutrients for something new and healthier to grow there. So a lot coming through with that. Let's get some tarot on this. I think that's very appropriate with Scorpio. But let's get some tarot on this and get some details. Because that's where I think the pitfall, that moon in Scorpio has troubles letting things go. Interesting. Thanks, Spirit. So kind of in this is like a loose past energy here. That is like a past, present, future, and advice type of deals that I do in these draws here recently. But you got the Eight of Pentacles in reverse. And this to me is not learning from something. This to me is that like there's still more work that's needing to be done. Maybe there's more time. You got this lunar cycles that are going around here on this card. And I think that is giving yourself the time, but knowing that you can forgive something. And again, it's not forgetting what's happened to you, but it is allowing it so it doesn't weigh down so heavy anymore, so that it doesn't have that power over you, so that you can alchemize that into a different type of narrative. I think there's something, being able to let that go is so freeing. When that person's no longer winning, or that situation is no longer winning. And it might be something too that maybe how you've been doing it in the past has, and this could be, if it's not you, maybe it's someone around you, you're noticing how maybe they're attracting certain things. I've seen that. I remember working with someone who has very, very heavy Scorpio placements in a tough house, and they had it in the 12th house. And I mean, it was palpable when they would recall certain things. You could feel the energy was just thick. We'd have to go outside sometimes. So we're just like, it's like, yo, we can't. Let's let that energy needs to move. It needs some air. And I think that there's just like a different way of needing to work with something here in this past. And that self-acceptance there, that's something that's really kind of speaking through there too, of like, a past thing doesn't need to define you if you don't let it. If you continue to do the same thing again and again and not learn from it, then yeah, like you're letting it define you. But it doesn't have to be, it's something that happened, but it's just one of many aspects of you as well. And I think that there is this need of accepting, and man, maybe even forgiving, even some self-forgiveness. This might even be like a recall. Let me get a clarifier for that. That's interesting. Ooh, interesting. I just listened to a podcast about him. How funny. Thanks, Spirit. And he's a tough one. Prince of Swords here. Prince of Swords, he's a fighter. Whenever I've gotten the Prince of Swords, I watch it because he's on the war path. And this, to me, he's the airy part of air. So he's just pure thought. And this could be about the words that may have been, again, I feel like maybe words were exchanged with something. Maybe this is how we've been talking with ourselves. A narrative is maybe needing to be changed here. Some compassion, forgiveness is needing to, and it's a tough thing. It's not something that I've said, like, it's just like, just do it. But it is something that you have to get into the practice of, the repetitions. Give it a few lunar cycles. Give it 10. Give it 20. Give it as many as you need and see how maybe because the thing is with the lunar cycles, I think that you can take a a specific theme, and maybe see how it's translating in each area. How maybe a relationship with a parent affects your self-image, affects your worth, the second house, how you communicate, the third house, your family upbringing, the fourth house, and like try to do it along those lines. So the Prince of Swords is really smart. But he's just like got a lot of thoughts about some things, about a lot of things. And I think you have to be careful about where you give your power to with the Prince of Swords, because he's the type. I remember when I was listening to that podcast, they were talking about him that he has this tendency to attach to whatever element happens to be around. So he'll just fight just for the sake of fighting. And I think that there's something about like, what's the point of fueling a certain thought process anymore? How constructive is this thing actually being? It's like almost like these figures here that are dragging this chariot are like almost fractures of you, and just like different things that just get pulled every which away. Yeah, the Prince of Swords he's aggressive, or at least he can be. And I think that combativeness is finding again a more constructive way of working with that. Otherwise, he's just always just looking for war, and it's just always going to attract those things. And I think you got to be careful with the fixed signs when you get into that kind of always never type of mentalities, because it can happen where you that won't you just see where you'll stay in a loop and stay stuck in something there. So but let's get some present energies and see what's going on right now. Spirit. So you got the Hermit in reverse here. We've got Virgo energy. And this Hermit in reverse it's giving me a need for when it's a different type of reflection when we're talking about the Hermit. This is some really kind of sitting with yourself, going on maybe going by a spot by the beach and just kind of sitting, maybe going to a special spot in the forest, maybe just having a space in your room and just having a place where you can reflect on what's been going on. What kind of path have maybe you've been on here that has been going on? Has it been one? There's something there with that self-acceptance too, of maybe seeing yourself in a new type of light here. If you were to come at yourself, maybe you've been coming at it real harsh, or situation, been looking at it just really just critically. And now there's a need for a softer kind of touch there that I'm getting, because Virgo is earth energy, is feminine, it's receptive, it's you don't yell at a tree to grow. It won't do that. Or I remember seeing something, these reports or these different experiments where you put let's say a plant, and you have one that had positive affirmation saying all these really lovely things, and you have another plant that is just screaming obscenities and really negative things, and how the one plant with all the negativity just drooped and drooped and drooped and just lost life while the other one is just thriving. And so it's maybe needing some kind of forgiveness or some kind of compassion, some sort of understanding, coming with a kinder touch there. And that's an aspect where, I think a lot of Scorpio energy gets associated with the darker things and whatnots. But I think that we have to remember too, they're more than just three emotions, than just despair, the anger, the things. There are that kindness, that joy, and Scorpio I feel has a real just deep empathy. And most of the Scorpios I've ever come across have had there's a real lovingness about them that you don't really see a lot of. And you see that in a lot of the Martian signs I've noticed, even in Aries. The Aries that I've come across, and maybe they have some more water in their chart than normal, maybe. But even the couple of Aries I come across, there's maybe a bit of an impatience, but there's still a kindness that's there as well. It's really fascinating. But let's get a clarifier on this Hermit. I'm with it. Spirit. So you have the Nine of Discs here. And I think that with this card, it's just if you've been on this sort of warpath, kind of whatever that maybe this lower vibrations of this Prince of Sword is coming up. It's like what have you gained from that? How has going through this, maybe withholding forgiveness, withholding compassion, not having this, maybe even like not just self-acceptance but acceptance that others will make mistakes but they will grow from them, and you don't necessarily have to even be there for that growth. That's something too. I'm not saying like you would have to forgive this part, be all buddy buddy again, but it's just like knowing that the wishing them well, I think, is something along those lines, as opposed to what you have to gain from putting more hate, out there and things along those lines. So that's another thing that's coming up, but. Yeah, definitely some. Yeah, this is a quiet time with this hermit. And I think that there is sometimes when I think with the reverse, sometimes I think that there is something that's needing to come out sometimes with the hermit. Something that's wanting to be seen when we sit in the quiet. So that's something else to think about there. Let's see what the future's looking like. Ooh, there's Scorpio. So you got the death card in reverse. Well, this card, the death, the rebirth card. And there's some stubbornness I'm kind of picking up that I'm feeling with this card. Maybe some resistance to the idea of maybe forgiveness, of moving on, whatever that might look like. But I think if you don't do it, you don't have to tell anyone this, but I think if you don't do, especially if you're harboring any sort of like, this ain't kind of malice or anything like that, whatever that looks like. Because I do think that sometimes when you get focused in the real, it can get nasty in there with Scorpio. I think that there can be, yeah, there's something here about that resistance. And why are we maybe resisting so hard? I think there's even a question with that as well. And maybe if this is on the flip side, maybe if you did something to someone and you're wanting that forgiveness, but you may not be able to get that apology for them, at least learning to forgive yourself, and that's like, what? Yeah, that was the consequence for this action. Like the relationship may have fizzled out or an opportunity went by or whatever that is. But something else has come to the mix there, like a new me is coming. And maybe that's this death card too, is not quite sure what that looks like. It may be not feeling maybe deserving of that. But I do think that everyone deserves that forgiveness at some point. Again, it's, I feel like that's just something I think that that's something that's a part of this experience. So nothing's perfect. Let's get it clarified with that death card though. Interesting, a little fixed sign here. That's fascinating too. So you got the lust card here, which is the strength card also in like the red or white deck. But this to me, with you getting this lust card, is the strength that it takes, I think, for all of this, for compassion, for forgiveness, all of that. And it's not an easy task. It can be something, but it is possible. It's absolutely possible. Practice, repetition. And noticing when you get caught in those loops. You got two fixed signs here, Leo and Scorpio. They actually form a square with one another, so that's actually really fascinating. But I think there might even be this tension here as far as like, am I able to do this thing? Do I be like, I know I want to change, but yeah, can I muster up whatever that energy or that those steps look like, maybe? And I think that it is there. And the fact that I think that something comes up when you have a repeating factor, especially when it translates in other relationships, there's something that's wanting to get like that. Like I was talking with the 20, excuse me, the 21st card, that World card. There's something that's wanting to be resolved there. Can this be the end? Question mark. Like, listen, no more question mark. Let's just leave it as a period. Like, this is where we're growing from this thing. But let's get some advice. Get some advice from Mars. Thanks, Spirit. So you got the Eight of Wands up right here. And this to me is getting the energy moving. I think that even a shock in how fast you may be able to get over something. But I think that it only starts when there's some genuine effort that's put in towards forgiving, or we're letting this, whatever this thing is, go, coming with this compassion, and how quickly you can recover from that and learn from that and start to change the direction of things. I even think that there's this thing with the Eight of Wands. Sometimes it could be this like messages that are coming or this news that's coming through, but to me too, I'm even getting like there's this window of time where there may be a time like you can apply it to your situation. Maybe there's something where we can resolve right or wrong, but it feels like the window's kind of small as far as like, maybe something happened, you misspoke, said something you didn't mean to, or maybe you meant it, but it just wasn't quite the proper time that you wanted it to come out. But there's maybe coming to get some clarity or some to kind of get some clarification or something along those lines there. Let me get a little more clarification with this Eight of Wands. See what's going on with that. Spirit. Alright, so you got the Four of Disc here. And let's go ahead and switch back over. And it's the Lord of Power. And I think that there's this here about standing in your power of not letting, I think, like just sort of like letting certain matters or certain situations interfere with the journey, I think, as far as like, or your path, like it's like seeing something for what it was. Maybe we just weren't in the right headspace. It may have just been like a perfect storm type of situation that's coming up here. But I think that there is a way for getting back rooted in your power, getting back rooted in your foundation in a sense. And the work I think that it takes to rise above, I think is something too that the Four of Discs kind of gets into. And I think sometimes too with the Four of Discs, my apologies for the fire alarm, but I think sometimes with the Prince or with the Four of Discs too, there's a bank reference that always comes up. And I think it's like, what are we depositing in that bank? Is this something that is that hatred? Is that things that really help you feel empowered, or is it just like, does it just get you back in a lower vibration? So that's just something I think that's coming up there too. But I think that's all I got for you there. It's something to hermit on. But if you like that, if anything resonated with you, give it a thumbs up. And share this if you know somebody who would resonate with this. And subscribe there, you Herman. Hit that bell button to get notified on all these videos each day. And then I'm going to shuffle for a surprise card or cards here. But if you are curious with what's going on with the other celestial bodies, down in the description box, I have a link for my other channel, Alchemist 8, where I do weekly transits talking about that and how to work with those energies. And work with the planets as constructively and as pragmatically as possible, so that we all can utilize this to our benefit. But let's get into your general energy, because you have, or your surprise card here, because you have the fulfillment card here. And that's interesting too. This fulfillment card is channeling, that's number 11. So you got the lust card energy. It's just the justice card and the strength card are switching the thought of the deck as far as the numbers go. But I think that there is this need, it's kind of calling to that lust card, to the strength card, a need for a fulfillment in the transformation. Knowing that I'm no longer feeding this energy with maybe these lower vibrations, or these kind of like these lower expressions of oneself. It's doing things that are more fulfilling, and leading. It's like leading from a wiser place, from a healed type of place, and understanding, like, there's a comprehension that I think is just like kind of happening here with this fulfillment card. Because I think that sometimes too, that those lower expressions, they distract you, and they can keep us, they pull us away from the course in a way. So that's something too. I think how certain emotions and maybe that lack of forgiveness, how that can get away with this life being fulfilling, because it always feels like maybe someone like took something from you, or that they can't quite, they still have this hold. And so I'm thinking that there's something about that being removed. So but yeah, that's all I got for you there. So a little something to think about. But till next time, keep raising that vibration through the roof. Stay mindful out there. I thought I had something else, and I will catch you on the next one, Jupiter Day.